Minnesota. I'm born and raised in Mankato, so for all the press that's here that's local, Mankato's about an hour and a half south from here, and you guys can hear me okay? I'm not going to talk. I really want everyone to get a chance to talk to Gary. We just wanted to say thank you for having us. Thank you for the warm welcome that Minnesota is giving everyone, Gary and all the people that are flying in. But 80% of the people that are coming in for VeeCon have never been to Minnesota before. And that's a really big statistic that I want you to walk away with from this event, because that's an enormous impact on the local economy and downtown Minneapolis, and understanding, you know, one of the reasons we picked Minneapolis is we wanted it to feel like VeeFriends. We wanted it to feel like a community. We didn't want to go to a big city where we'd be really dispersed. We wanted everyone to be in kind of a locale where everyone can connect with each other. And I think Minneapolis, especially downtown Minneapolis, has done a super job of giving that community vibe that VeeFriends is really passionate about. VeeCon starts today, officially. There's a welcome party from 5 to 10 p.m. at the Commons, right outside US Bank Stadium. We encourage all of you to come. The weather looks like it's going to cooperate. It's a little bit rainy now, but the clouds will be out later, so we'll be fine, not having thunderstorms. And then tomorrow, Saturday and Sunday, we're in US Bank Stadium. We have more than 150 speakers that'll be flying in for this event. A lot of them are actually here already. You probably bumped into them at any restaurants if you've been out and about. And it's a full schedule. And the focus of the conference is to talk about Web3, is to talk about culture, is to talk about NFTs. And really, the people that are here are people that have invested and bought one of Gary's tokens. But one of the mechanisms of the tokens is it created a ticket. And so a lot of people traded or sold their tickets. There's a lot of first-timers that are coming to learn and understand why should we care about NFTs? Why should we care about blockchain? Why should we listen to conversations about Web3? So there's going to be a lot of learning and education happening at VeeCon. And then relationships. We want people to meet each other. It's a big time in real life. VeeFriends has the largest Discord server for an NFT project, which is very significant. More than 300,000 people are on that Discord server that have been talking to each other. A lot of them are going to meet for the first time today. And so that's going to be a magical moment for them to see each other in person. 3 days of programming. We wraps up Sunday at 3 p.m. We're really excited about being here, and Gary is the star of the show. Can I take any of your questions? And we're here just to listen to any of the ideas you want to share and questions we can answer for you. And we appreciate that you're here, and hope you guys had a good lunch.
Cool. Just want to thank everybody for coming out. You know that plenty of other things everybody could be doing, so humbled by that, and really, really ready to answer any of the questions. I think Maha was able to give you a lot of context on the event and the overview, but happy to go into any of the details or any of the questions that I can answer for you. And once again, thank you so much for being here. And just also want to thank the incredible hospitality from our very handsome chef and his son. Yeah, but I would love to do some Q&A. Happy to go into it. How do you want to do it?
Yeah, well, any questions that anybody has that want to bring up, we'll talk about them. I see one. Do you want to say, gentlemen, looks like.
Stand up. Go ahead, my friend.
Did you have a question? Go ahead.
Good.
With so many people, with a lot of people not aware of what NFTs are yet, once we can explain that to them in layman's terms, how do we make them comfortable with the idea?
You know, I think when the question is, how do we make people comfortable once they understand in layman's terms what an NFT is? You know, I think of as my parents know, especially my mom, I was an atrocious student, but the one class that I probably did best in was history and social studies, which now makes a lot more sense to me as I've grown up and figured myself out a little bit. And I use history a lot. For most of this room, there's some youngsters running around, but for most of this room, almost all of us remember when the world had to get comfortable with the internet. When my dad and I launched an e-commerce wine store in 1997, everybody said to me that people were not going to put their credit card into a computer. Many of you remember yourselves or definitely your parents being incredibly scared and uncomfortable with the thought of putting a credit card into a computer because somebody would steal it and it would be a problem. And to remind all of you, because it's long forgotten, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99 had plenty of muckery with stolen credit cards, and we had to let the technology catch up. We used to not care about that 4-digit number on the credit and many other things. So, to me, I don't think about it in any other way than education and communication solves everything. This is going to take some time. Not even for me, 16 months ago, understanding how to buy an NFT, taking US dollars, converting them to Ethereum, setting up a MetaMask, buying on OpenSea, there was a lot of friction. It's been very challenging, even for my most technically sound friends in the last 16 months. But even in the last 6 months, and definitely the roadmap you're seeing from the Metas, from the Coinbases, from the Ledgers, already tech friction is being taken out of the equation, and in 36, 48 months, it's gonna look very different. There's a lot of people in here who remember paying $2 a minute for the internet and hearing coo-coo, I have to remind all of you, that seems like a billion years ago. It's not that long ago. It's not that long ago that you were on the internet and your mom picked up the phone and you got knocked off the internet. That doesn't happen anymore. To remind everybody, we were not on the internet in our mobile devices just a few minutes ago. The iPhone changed the world. It's not that long ago. So I think your question's the right question. I think it's the biggest question. I actually just think it's just a matter of time. And all I can really focus on is over-communicating, over-educating. This conference is very grounded in educating. When I think about what Ledger, Coinbase, and others have activations, teaching people how to protect their highest value assets on a cold wallet so it can't be stolen. These are all new ideas for all of us. But I've seen this now for the 3rd time. I saw everybody looking at me with blank stares of the idea of somebody buying wine on the internet. Literally everybody said, why don't they just go to the store? And I was like, because it's gonna be better. I looked at everybody looking at me with blank stares when they asked me, why would anybody want a Twitter or a Facebook? Who cares if I'm having lunch or what TV show I'm watching? My answer in 2007 was everybody. That's now more accepted than it was 15 years ago. NFTs are really fun for collectability and art, and as a collector, it absolutely scratches that itch. But it is a tiny part of the consumer blockchain, and we will all interact with NFTs because they will be our airline tickets, they will be our receipts, they will be our tickets to US Bank Stadium, they will be our membership cards. Right now we use plastic QR codes and email confirmations for many things that I think the blockchain will eat up because it's better technology for those things. And so that will just take some time.
Anyone else?
Hey Gary, how you doing?
Great, brother.
Good. Can you talk a little bit about how Walt Disney influenced your creation of the VeeCon's characters?
Yeah, it's funny. This process has reminded me about a lot of conversations. My friend Addison put out a project called 8-Bit that is getting some good attention in NFT land. Got very viral a couple weeks ago. AJ, who just stepped out, he's not here, said, hey, this is Addison's project. Made me remind me of what he did years ago when I met him. I went to go DM him. I hadn't DM'd him since 2009. 12 years ago was the last time we DM'd on Twitter. I DM'd him, congratulations, this is cool. Reminds me of what you were trying to do years ago. I tweeted at him publicly as well. He replied in the tweet. He's like, Gary, it's so good to see you. So pumped you're doing this. He goes, do you remember the conversation we had about Walt Disney in London in 2010? And it sparked something, and you know this because we're close. Walt Disney and Vince McMahon have kind of always hung around my interests, the way I thought about the world. Even when I was in my dad's business, I wish my best friend Brandon gets here tomorrow, I used to tell him, I'm gonna create a character named Grapey Grape. And it's gonna be this wine enthusiast park. And I had just always, even marketing. For me, marketing is so much more about Flow from Progressive, or the Jolly Green Giant, or the characters of General Mills, right here in Minnesota, like all those cereal characters, or the Noid from Domino's, I've always attached to characters telling stories. So growing up as a salesman and a business person and obviously going into the wine business, I didn't really understand how much I was affected in my youth by the Disney. I'm an 80s baby too, so, right, like, meaning I grew up in the 80s. That was the height of IP being created. He-Man, Transformers, My Little Pony, Strawberry Shortcake, using television as a means to building IP. I view this era of NFT as an era that we'll look back on in 30 years as places where IP was created. I think VeeFriends, I'm very focused and confident will be there, but many of the people that are showcased here, whether Bored Ape or World of Women or Women and Weapons or Doodles or Cool Cats, I think in 20 years, the way I look at 1980s after school television as this profound window from 82 to 88, where some of the biggest brands we know today in entertainment were born through the after-school television. I think that's happening in NFT land. And in hindsight, the character development that Walt Disney did and the character development that Vince McMahon did, obviously those were human beings. But to me, Hulk Hogan and Mickey Mouse are the same thing. And that's how I think of Patient Panda and Empathy Elephant. Yes, sir.
So many people try to go after big partnerships right away, and I think one of your objectives here is to build a community, decentralize things, and to really go bottom up. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how you see NFTs also having an impact on social change beyond just kind of the technical layer, but more broadly education, social change, and a better society.
It's a great question, and I'll tell you why. You're leading the question to a direction that I think we all have to understand, which is the reason I'm trying to make such aggressive comps to the internet in the late 90s is because I believe it. Meaning, I'll give you an example. I sit on the board of Pencils of Promise and Charity Water. And the drumbeat that I'm having is, look, we're going to have our charity events. Many people here have been to charity events, social causes they care about. And you have these one-time events. And you do an auction and you raise some money and you call it a day and that's your year. The fact that we're going to be able to auction off NFTs, right? And then that art, as it sells in perpetuity, has a royalty contract that goes back to the nonprofit. This is going to change the way dollars move around, information moves around, IP moves around, always attached to the original IP holder. So the reason I keep bringing up the internet is there isn't a charity on earth that doesn't have a website. There isn't a charity on earth that doesn't think about social media as an engine to build awareness, to raise dollars to what they want, all the way from a local school trying to do something, all the way to the biggest charities in the world. It's inconceivable, at least in this brain, that in 15 years, there is any education, social good, any organization, government, startup, big corporation that doesn't have NFT infrastructure integrated, an NFT strategy, the way we today have a web, an internet, and social media strategy. Just to pound this home, because I want you to remember it, because it's important. A lot of people did not believe the internet would have a strategy in 25 years. Plenty of articles written, the internet was a fad. There's articles already being written that NFTs are a fad because the market has recorrected. We repeat the same mistakes with big technologies. I'm passionate because I just want you to all know it for yourself because I feel like it's going to impact. I would be stunned if the majority of homes are not bought on the blockchain. I would say it's going to take about 25 years. That the majority of homes, 26 years from today, will be bought peer-to-peer through the blockchain on a smart contract deed done on the blockchain with nobody in the middle taking a percentage action. And that's just where we're going. We're going there because these decentralized servers are the biggest invention to the human race since the centralized servers that created the internet. Yes, sir.
So to double down on the previous questions, we also go into the world in myopic lands. But we look at the Fortune 500 and how many companies are still in the Fortune 500 versus 20, 30 years ago. Disruption is paramount.
Yes.
Can you comment on the importance of how digital transformation is changing the landscape of Gen Z and how people want to have absolute ownership and how that plays into things that could ultimately disrupt companies like Disney and Amazon?
tremendous question. I think you already answered it within the question that I think a lot of people don't realize. I don't think a lot of people realize how often the biggest companies in the world change over in short windows. I view 20 years as a short window. And the acceleration is greater now because of the internet, right? The speed in which a Google or an Uber or a Meta could happen was very different than when you had to build big buildings, right? The world's changed. I don't think people realize the compounding speed of change that a blockchain with a mature internet do. If the blockchain came first, it would have taken forever because NFTs are being built on the infrastructure of social media. That's where the awareness, that's where the communication is coming in. People buy NFTs the same reason they buy cars and jewelry and high fashion. It's a form of communication. It just is. Everybody here right now is dressed for a very specific subconscious reason. You are communicating right now whether you decided to wear it today. It's what we do. It's humans' biggest need. So to your point, in a world where people have many more options, because that's what the internet did, now you've got a huge option pool. Pixar's talent pool, all of a sudden, instead of dreaming to be a big executive at Pixar, maybe I'm gonna build my own project. Because even it's how influencer marketing worked out. When I wrote Crush It in 2009, I wrote it in 08, it came out in 09. If you go back right now and look at the comments on Amazon for Crush It, I get completely shit on in the first 2 years of that book because everyone's like, yeah, people are gonna make $100,000 a year making videos on YouTube. Now that is the most common sense thing. Like almost everybody knows somebody under the age of 25 making their full living on making videos on YouTube. What people didn't see, and this is what's happening in NFT land right now, what people don't see is the long tail. They focus too much on Charlie D'Amelio and Logan Paul. Yes, most people will not make $7 million a year being a YouTuber, but do you know how many people make $67,000 a year? And that's what's going to happen in NFT land, and to your point, that's going to disrupt corporations. Because right now, corporations are worried about the great resignation, and I keep saying, with the emergence of the blockchain and a mature internet, I'm like, you're worried about the great resignation? The elephant in the room is the great never applying in the first place. And so you have an entire generation of 15 to 20-year-olds who it's inconceivable to them to get a job because they'd rather make $55,000 a year in brand deals, AdSense revenue from YouTube, or selling some NFTs so they don't have to do something they don't want to do. And as long as that generation's able to live within their means, which is a massive challenge for that generation, but if they are, then they can sustain it. And so I think the disruption in the next 30 makes the last 30 look mundane compared to the way the last 30 has to the 30 prior to it, just because the advancements of the speed of which things can happen. Now, it's an important call out. We are fully in gold rush greed mode in NFT land right now. Where we are right now in NFT land is very similar to where we were in internet stock valuations in 1998. For some of you, if you've done the homework or if you remember, we had companies worth $40 billion that had no revenue. And that's why they all crashed. That's gonna happen in NFT land. I've been saying for the last year that I think 98% of the projects that have a high value right now will go to zero or something quite low, because supply and demand is gonna curve out. But I really appreciate your question because I think the biggest brands in the world need to be very careful. A lot of their advantages are getting commoditized by technology, and then it becomes consumer authenticity, which big companies are very bad at because they're scared, and they have to be corporate. And so there's a lot of trends in the air that create enormous opportunities for entrepreneurs and a lot of vulnerabilities for big companies.
Mike Lazaro and others, I'm seeing this
Same thing.
this parallel as well. So what are you seeing there? Because you're very good at pattern recognition as well.
Thank you. The question is, I'm sitting here, Jen is saying, I'm sitting here, and this reminds me of seeing you at the early days of Web 2 at the O'Reilly conferences. Mike Lazaro was going to be here, was there. I remember seeing you guys, and I'm sensing similarities. What you're sensing is when there's significant technology change, most human beings go on defense. They don't want it. This feels weird. I don't know. It's going to be bad. A small group takes the complete opposite take. This is good, this is optimism, there's opportunity. What you're sensing, I even said it, like last year, I had talked to many of my friends that I grew up in the Web 2 game with in 2009, 10, 11, 12, for the first time in 5 years, 7 years, 9 years. Mainly because a lot of my Web 2 friends made a lot of money and stopped hustling. And so, but it was fun to see how curious they were, because it's almost like, it's like, how some animals come out of hibernation, if you watch, they just know, right? They know the tides are high, they just know. And this group of people literally just know that, oh my God, there's another massive shift for consumers that is coming. And many of them try to find their place in what they're gonna do. I think you're sensing that there's a group of individuals who have very strong consumer intuition, who have a very strong sense of that 3, 2, 4 year window when most people say no, and they're completely convinced that in 5, 6, 7 years, everyone's gonna say, oh darn yes. And that's what you're sensing. It's the same energy. It's why I'm so invigorated. It's why, I've really put my reputation on consumer blockchain. And at this point in my career, that's like a high risk maneuver, almost not needed. But it was so obvious to me, and it's very clear to me that this is what's gonna happen in this space. And so I think you just have the band getting back together. There's a lot of people that sense it, and a lot that don't. That's actually been interesting to me. A lot of people that were incredibly good at seeing what was about to happen in Web 2, I have found pretty interestingly struggled with what's brewing here. And the biggest thing I could say to that is, I'll tell you, the biggest hurdle for all of us, myself included, took me a few minutes of studying, aka a month, getting your web internet brain out of the way. We're looking at the blockchain through the lens of the internet, and it's not the internet, right? The things you're thinking, like, the jokes they make, like, oh, you paid $50,000 for that NFT, I just right-clicked and saved it, I own it too. Even that fun joke that is like the meme joke of the industry, it comes from the angle of people growing up with the internet and doing internet things. You're right, on the internet, we click images, we right-click and save them, and they're on our computer. It doesn't mean you own it. And that is something people are struggling with, the concept of digital ownership, because there was no way to do it. Now there's a way to do it, and that is why ticketing, memberships, art are now ownable, because you can own it. People are struggling with the value of digital while they're living in the value of digital. I've had people literally early on last year push back at me, fun debate, friends, acquaintances, fun debate, push back. One friend is like, Gary, this is the stupid, out of all the things, this is the stupidest one. This is stupid. I said, brother, you asked me to get you a blue check mark on Instagram last month. I'm like, why do you want that? That's digital. You don't own it. Because his whole point was like, Gary, I can't walk around with it. I need to walk around with it. You can't walk, I'm not holding my blue check mark from Instagram. Digital validation is how the world works. It's why I knew social media was going to work. The reason I knew social media was going to work is I knew that all of you were going to take pictures for validation. Look how family is so happy. Look how good the trip is. Look how beautiful my yard is. Look how good my business is doing. Look how cool I am. Here's LeBron. It's what we do. It's what humans do. And so I keep life very basic. Technologies are complicated. Human beings are simple. Hi. Thanks again for this morning. You were great.
Yeah, that was fun. Thank you. So you've got an amazing list of speakers for the next 3 days. If there was one not to miss, who would it be? Who are you excited to hear from us?
That's a great question, which you can imagine is very hard. All 150 speakers, like your 150 children, you love them all so much equally. Who I'm personal? I'll tell you who I am very excited about. There's an artist, Amber Victoria, who's on a panel. She's a very successful artist at this point in the space, but it has a heavy emotion for me because she was an employee at VaynerMedia years ago, and she was in the art department. And it's funny, I'm so excited about Web3 because people will now be able to have their own career doing their own art instead of working for VaynerMedia. This is what I'm very passionate about. I'm very passionate about loving the game more than my own self-interests. And Amber, and my love for Amber, I know AJ is here, AJ's been helping her, I've been helping her. like along this journey. Even when she left Vayner to be an independent physical artist, we were very aggressive, like pushing her to get into this space a year and a half ago. She did, she's very talented. And the fact that she's on this epic panel, and I think like, this is it. This is the manifestation. This is the event in this space. She's on one of the most important panels. And this young woman didn't have the option of NFTs years ago, which is why she worked at VaynerMedia to work in advertising. There are so many people in the world today who were born to be artists, but had no practical way to be that, and thus had to either work in advertising and kind of touch it, or go completely the other way and do other jobs. And the fact that that long tail is now going to exist in perpetuity, and the fact that she represents that for me, is probably the one that kind of, you know, really goes there. But also, like, you know, I'm excited. Avery, she just stepped out. Avery, I think, is interviewing Spike Lee.
Yes.
So I'm really interested to see Spike's talk, because Spike grew up in Hollywood. I think movie making is about to change forever. So many movies can't get funding. Even Leonardo DiCaprio had to really hustle to get Wolf of Wall Street. And he was the biggest star, had all the relationships, access to big money, and that was a grind. There are millions of movies in the brains of brilliant people today that can't be made because they're not part of the Hollywood machine. In a decade, when this is all understood what I'm talking about, just like everybody became famous with social media, we are going to see incredible movies made because somebody is going to make an NFT project. Once the government, the SEC, rules on how they're going to be looking at the tax implications and the fundraising of NFTs. But I predict, or I hope, with a hair of prediction, because I never trust where the government's going to go with something, but if the government goes where I hope it goes, similar to the Jobs Act and other places that they've done in the past, you will have young filmmakers who have brilliant ideas, who won't have to get lucky like Forrest Gump did because somebody found the book and it happened, who will be able to go to the world and their audience, like they do today on TikTok and Instagram, and say, here is my movie, here is my script. If you buy an NFT from this movie, and here's the image, maybe the NFT is the movie poster that they team up with an artist with, but the NFT is actually a smart contract for a piece of the back end of the movie. So you read it and you're like, you know, think about all of us reading nonfiction or movies, you know? Now you read something, you love it. You think it would be an amazing movie. Now you buy 4 NFTs and you own 0.001% of the back end of the film, but then the film actually can get made because that individual has raised enough money from selling NFTs as a piece of the way they fundraise for the film and give up a percentage of the action, thus giving them money to make. Then they make, then it goes out, then they own it, the audience owns it, and then it gets distribution from the way OTT now works. These are things that I can see from the blockchain that I don't think people are putting the pieces together just yet, and it will change the world. So Spike is especially interesting to me because he represents someone who had to really fight to have some ownership of his films, go through the old system, and it'll be interesting. You know, and Avery's sharp as it gets, so I'm sure she's going to ask some really smart questions. So as a main stage, that one has the potential to be interesting, because here's how my brain works. They do that talk, you just heard what I'm putting down. Is there one person in that audience who's like, I'm going to do that? Like, that's how I think about it. I don't think people have perspective to their full opportunities. I think the world and parenting and the system closes people's windows instead of expands it. And so I'm very passionate as a human being through what I'm doing with VeeFriends, through this conference, to create what if scenarios for people, or what if, did you know you could? And so I think Hollywood has gotten very basic because it's such a big business, and that's why we have 8,000 superhero movies and all the independent stuff is like hard to come by. I actually think the blockchain is the beginning of a renaissance in Hollywood in 20 years from now, because I think a lot of films that never had a prayer to get funded in today's Hollywood are going to get funded by audiences, made, just like almost everybody who's famous on social media would have never been famous in Hollywood 25 years ago. That's easy for everybody to say, yep, I understand that. That's about to happen with books, with films, with music. It's going to be an incredible renaissance for creativity and art. There'll be plenty of money involved, there'll be plenty of business, it's part of the equation. especially in America. We are a capitalist country, but this is going to be a profound century for creative people.
Just building on that with Spike, he talked a lot. He did a podcast with Gary a couple weeks ago, and he talked a lot about how he missed it. When the internet came out, he didn't listen, and he missed the boat. And he's like, I don't want to miss it. I don't want to miss the opportunity that this could present for his films and his IP, which I think was quite interesting. And he also has a very strong connection to Minnesota. Much of the music and most of his 80s and 90s films are done by Prince and at the compound out at Paisley Park. So just wanted to bring that local aspect to the story as well. I think that's an important one.
So, somebody that lives, so I'm Courtney Reese, I'm from Minneapolis, I'm the tourism board. Kevin and I am here to help you out. So this one is a bit of a setup question. Hopefully you're going to nail it. As somebody that lives so much in the digital space,
Yes.
why an in-person conference and why Minneapolis?
I hope I can nail this. Let me give you the truth, which is what always works for me. Why in person? So my come up was big digital, and then I started to be someone who put out a lot of books. And every time I would put out a book, 2009, 11, 14, 17, I would get bombarded with, why are you writing books, Mr. Digital? Why are you writing books? And my answer on Twitter was always, because people read them. That's why a conference, because the world is not or, it's and. And people, I think a lot of us are very excited that the whole world learned how to use Zoom, because some of us are connecting with our relatives from abroad. I'm sure certain people, me definitely included, realize, wait a minute, there's some trips on the airplane that beats up my body that I don't need to take. I don't need to go to Chicago for one meeting and go back. That could be on Zoom. So we're going to learn that. However, I'm sure I speak for everyone. Even the most introverted of us in this room, after 2.5 years of being locked up, it's nice to be with each other to the best of our ability. And for me, my favorite thing is people. And why I love digital, unlike a lot of people who are like, digital's not real, you have to do it in person, I don't agree with that. I've built many relationships here through digital first as a gateway to then the physical. And so I believe in both. And so I definitely wanted to do a physical conference. Minnesota has a lot to do with a lot of things. Maha is, in my world, very passionate Minnesota head. She's a Packers fan, by the way. Don't let her bullshit you. It's true. Number two, Mike Vcon, who's a very important person in my life. 8 years ago, I decided to get serious about my health, and decided I finally figured out how. I needed a babysitter, and he's from Minnesota. And I spend more time with Mike than almost anybody. Every day, we talk, we become family. We just got married last weekend. I'm very close to him, and that tie. The owners of the Vikings are obviously the Will family. The Will family actually lives in Springfield, New Jersey, where my dad's store is, and I've known them for a very, very long time. I also co-invested with them in the esports team, the Rocker. We're going to go check out the new facility right after this. So my great dream in life is to own the New York Jets. And my first significant foray into team ownership has been in esports in Minnesota. And I've been here 7 or 8 times over the last decade for conferences and different business meetings. And, I'm sure everyone can attach to what I'm about to say. There's certain places you go, and you don't even know why, but you feel comfortable. You like it. It's just a subjective call, whether it's weather or the people. But I've just always had a really nice kind of connection to Minnesota that was authentic to me. Just like I knew that I wanted to draw the V-Friends first, even though they're simple doodles to some, I knew that they had to be authentic to me. I wanted the first VeeCon to be in a place that mattered to me, and so that's why we're here.
I want to ask a question because I wanted to tell the story actually about the characters in business, the characters and how you came up. Talk a little bit about the characters.
Yeah, I think everyone's busy, so I'm going to make no assumptions. I had a book come out this fall called 12 and a Half, and it's a book that talks about the 13 attributes that I think are standing out for human beings, but business leaders, and how I see emotional intelligence rising dramatically in the variable of success within organizations versus IQ, and how EQ is now flip the IQ in importance, and that the train has left the station and the separation will be even greater. For me, the way that I've built the things that matter to me and the things that I've observed from others that I respect are built around more leaning into empathy and kindness, patience, but it's also blended with ambition, tenacity, work ethic, and it's kind of, the way I try to frame it up when I talk to people about it is, I think it's very obvious to people, America's gotten very, very red and blue, and I think purple is where the magic is. We've been almost told that we have to be binary on one side or the other, when in reality, if we really shot it, everyone's got a little bit of things they believe in on both sides, and I think that's where the happiness is, that's where the civility that I think the world is missing is, and I want to really use the characters of VeeFriends to champion that. One of the characters that matters the most to me, that I'll probably develop first, after your question, like in cartoons or books, is Accountable Ant. So there's a character in VeeFriends called Accountable Ant. When I look at the world, I'm sitting in a very unique spot where I'm getting 10,000 direct messages a day through social media, where people are speaking to me about their hopes and dreams and concerns and anxieties. And basically, I would argue that for a living, I'm doing human anthropology strategy work and reading this stuff and coming up with hypotheses and things that I want to talk about. What has completely run goosebumps up my spine as like the thing that I want to figure out how to crack as a communicator, both in the very narrow world of being Gary Vee, but in the much broader world of what I think VeeFriends can do in the next 5 decades, is how do I champion parents and as young as possible, human beings, to fall into putting accountability on a pedestal as a good thing. For me, through my observations of the last half decade, I believe our infatuation with the lack of accountability is leading to incredible anxiety. That so many people would be so much happier if they had the mental capacity and the emotional capacity to say, this is my fault. This isn't working because of me. Because the second you give up accountability, you feel not in control, and it leads to a lot of aspects. So, the characters are a lot of fun for me, because if I can make Accountable Ant popular through whatever format I deploy the IP in, well, then the conversation around accountability can grow in popular culture. And for the last 30 years, I've studied very vigorously how things become the thing we play with it, the framework, the conversation, the words that we've adopted. When I did Empathy Wines as the brand that I wanted to do when I did my direct-to-consumer wine brand, empathy, if you look at Google Trends on the day I launched it, was not a word that was really at the forefront of popular culture. It has become a remarkably popular word in the last 4 to 5 years. And I think a lot about that, about like, why do people focus on things? What becomes the temperature of our society? What are we focusing on and why? And so I'm excited about the challenge of developing characters as champions to more purple conversations, more positive conversations. I am the byproduct of extremely phenomenal parenting and circumstances that were not in my control, and I have an immense amount of gratitude towards that, and I feel that I have a huge responsibility to try to scale that, because I wish people could walk around Earth with as little anxiety as I do.
One of the interesting observations, Gary went to US Bank Stadium yesterday for the first time, and everything in US Bank Stadium is purple.
Yeah, that was something that when we were deciding that, I didn't answer it fully. That purple thing matters to me. It really does. I think we really need it on a much bigger scale than VeeFriends and NFT. I'm excited to play a small, tiny part in trying to have more thoughtful, well-rounded conversations, and I'm extremely confident in my ability. When I look back at how I helped my father's wine business, it was through marketing. When I think about how VaynerMedia was built, it was through marketing. When I think about why we're changing so many brands' P&Ls, it's through marketing. When you look at the world, almost everything's getting commoditized, except the ability to be a modern communicator, understanding where and how to speak, make videos, pictures. And so I have a lot of confidence in my ability to do that for VeeFriends IP. And I think what makes me happier, I would say Disney, it's funny, Adam, I met a woman, Andy, that was a profound meeting. Andy and I were put in touch with this incredible storytelling executive, a woman out of the UK, who's had an unbelievable career. And you remember? She came in with a level of, not cynicism, but definitely not like hype and interest. She was doing it as a favor to somebody who introduced us. And we started talking, and she's like, tell me about VeeFriends. And I did what I'm doing here today. I went on a 40-minute rant with no breaths and gave her everything I had. And she gave me one of the greatest compliments of my career. She takes a pause, and she goes, Gary, and she has this incredible British accent. She goes, can I be frank with you? I'm like, please. She's like, I wasn't really interested in this meeting. I did it out of friendship for somebody. I kind of did a little Googling. I'm like, what's this guy got to do with creative storytelling? She goes, in your little banter just now, you made me feel something that I have only felt one other time, and it was the first time I had a conversation with Jim Henson. And like, she just, like, that is just so, like, too much to handle. But what she said next actually really rocked me. That was obviously a nice compliment, and that's cool. What she said next blew me away. She said, let me tell you why. And she went into it, and then she said one thing. So she was the writer that Jim Henson came to with the brief to create Fraggle Rock. And you know what the Fraggle Rock brief was? He put a piece of paper on her table, and he said to her, through Let's Make a Show with Puppets, stop war. And it, you know, I'm oversharing, but like the simplicity of that brief, that Jim Henson's energy and interest to do a show was 2 words: stop war. Really rocked me, and I feel it as I sit here, which is all I want to do with VeeFriends for the next 50 years is make the world better. And so I understood it. It obviously was incredible affirmation for me, for her to say something like that. And so we're on a real mission here. We're going to use NFT technology to give us a jump start. We're going to educate a lot of people to where the world's going. But I think the more important mission at hand is to use the communication gifts that we've been given to leave as big of an impact as we possibly can.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Cheers.